COVID-19 pandemic may be far from being over, but then life must continue. Man must find a way to live and deal with it, bringing about new way of life, the new normal. Well, one of the ways to deal and live with the situation is abiding by the preventive protocols, especially in schools where there is usually a cluster of children. Since life must continue, then children must be back to school. And so schools in the FCT, like in many other states, have since resumed on the 18th of January as stipulated by the Presidential Task Force. On the program today, it is essential to look at how schools are faring with the observance of the protocols to avoid making schooling a widespread activity. We will let you to that in the course of the program. Then from the pulpit is the word of exhortation on the need to keep faith in God despite all odds. On this edition, as usual, we were at some countrysides of the FCT, Waru and Chorin communities. Let's keep the suspense of what we brought. The program is Sunday Magazine, your Sunday tonic on the Unity Station, NTA Channel 5 Abuja. Just sit back and relax your evening with us. I am Ifoma Ojinta, and I'll be right back. Thanks for staying tuned. I will begin with figures from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, as at 23rd January 2021, which indicates 176 new cases of COVID-19 in the FCT, making the total number of confirmed cases 15,682, active cases 4,631. The number of discharged cases in the territory is at 10,932, and sadly 119 deaths have been recorded in the FCT. And now to religious matters. Despite all challenges confronting Nigeria, God has remained faithful. Therefore, unity must be fostered by all to move the nation forward. This formed the cross of Sunday church sermon at the Cherubim and Seraphim Movement Church worldwide, Lakibu District, Abuja. Mariam Georgetobo also visited the Elohim Christian Center International.
The chairman, Cherubim and Seraphim Movement Church worldwide, Special Apostle Adebayo Anthony Boduri, says God is able to do all things for us as a nation and urge leaders at all levels to work for the unity and progress of the nation.
With President Muhammadu Buhari, I know God will intervene and use him wonderfully. All the governors, all the National Assembly members, God will enter into their mind and they will continue to do the needful. Nigeria will be well again. The unity, God will foster it for us.
We are first Christians and then before our individual blocks. We are all about the unity of Christ. We're just here to unify God, to glorify God together.
And at the Elohim Christian Center International, the presiding bishop, Fidelis Ugnong, in his sermon enjoined Christians to remember to leave a legacy in whatever they do and wherever they find themselves.
Some people spend their time in making enemies instead of making friends. It's better to make friends than to make enemies, because a day come in your life that you need somebody to speak on your behalf, maybe in your absence. It will take a friend. It will take somebody who believe you have invested in to speak on your behalf.
This is a challenging time for us in Nigeria, but our faith should remain in God Almighty. He is the only one that has the answer to what we are passing through.
The Sunday church service also featured prayer for Nigeria, praise and worship.
Thank you very much, Mariam. Now, the federal government says that no COVID-19 test is required for returning students to be admitted into their schools as academic activities resume across schools in the country. In the FCT, where schools have opened to academic activities, Hadiza Godwin-Ibuni has been monitoring schools to see if the guidelines set out by government is being complied with.
The federal government, in a statement, explained that only temperature tests should be carried out on students. School authorities were warned against asking students or parents to undergo COVID-19 tests before they are accepted in their schools. Some of the schools visited in the nation's capital explained the methods used by them to ensure that everyone within the school premises is safe.
The federal government, or rather the CDC, didn't ask any school to administer tests to their pupils and all students before admission into school. So I think it was a bit uncalled for. Because even if you do the test, for example, you can do the test in the morning, and before the result comes out, the person that you tested negative probably has contacted the virus.
As they are coming, we have to test their temperature.
We have been informed that we don't have the right to ask students to do COVID-19 tests or to do COVID-19 tests for the students.
The students confirmed that only temperature checks were carried out on them. All visitors and staff also had their temperatures checked before they stepped foot into the school gates. The schools have ensured strict compliance with COVID-19 protocols. The wearing of face masks by all students is compulsory. The rule is also being enforced on teachers and workers. Temperature checks and provision of hand-washing facilities at strategic locations in all schools is also clearly being implemented.
I not bring any COVID-19 test with me before I enter the premises of the school.
They check our temperatures and observe if we are wearing face masks.
According to government directive, schools must ensure functional health clinic with facility for isolation and transportation of suspected cases to medical facilities. There should also be adherence to all other non-pharmaceutical protocols, restrictions and containment measures as may be prescribed by the PTA from time to time.
Thank you very much, Hadiza, for that background. And joining me in the studio to discuss more on school resumption and the safety of the students is the chairman, FCT Secondary Education Board. He's Yahaya Musa Mohammed. You're welcome to NC Channel 5 Sunday Magazine, sir.
Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure being with you.
Okay. Now, school has finally resumed, generally in the FCT. What are your fears?
Well, my fears specifically has to do with our attitude towards preparedness to comply with COVID-19 protocols, from particularly parents, some of whom are lackadaisical and having this penchant for not actually complying with these protocols. But for us in the school system, we have put a system in place to ensure that no student actually flouts these protocols that have been specified for them. We have these protocols pasted in strategic locations. We have COVID-19 committees being put in place in schools to ensure compliance. And all the non-pharmaceutical materials have been made available to the students. So our fears actually do not have to do with the availability of non-pharmaceutical materials, but rather attitudinal.
Okay. Now, before now, schools usually have break time where most students, come out of their classrooms to eat and play. Now, is the story different? How do the school ensure, compliance of the new order of doing things due to the COVID-19?
Well, empirically, it's a moment where we have this new normal, where people actually will comply and key into the situation as it, evolves. We have a pandemic that, it's something that was never expected, and the machineries were put in place, the committees were put in place, the teachers who actually handle these students in schools have been given specific directives on the do's and don'ts. So the issue of break, it's not actually like the way it used to be. In fact, students even enjoy the current situation where they are confined within the four walls of their classrooms to observe their breakfast. So they have come to take it as part of the new culture that they can contend with, and of course they are contending with it.
Okay. Now, talking about the issue of wearing of mask, we know it is compulsory. But what about special students, who probably might have difficulty in breathing, like those who are asthmatic?
Yes, in the Education Secretariat, we have a department that is actually in charge of special needs. We have a special needs department that handles cases of inclusive education. So students who actually have some specific or challenges are given special attention, and that is actually not a problem. Okay. We have our clinics that make provision for all categories of students. So that is also not something that should bother us much. We have people who are capable. We have people who are trained and special in such areas to handle special students. Okay. Of course, we have schools that are specifically meant for students who actually have one form of disability or the other. We have the special schools, one in Kuje, about 2 in Kuje, and within the township here we also have a special school. And then we have also schools that practice this inclusive education, where both the physically fit and the physically challenged students, are being tutored side by side. So we have people on ground who actually can take charge of situations that affect the specific requirements and needs of every student.
Now, are there students who are exempted from wearing the face mask?
Well, I cannot say categorically that there are certain, specific number of students or category of students who are exempted. I think those who are special in the field, medical personnel, could actually tell better. But for us, the issue of wearing the face mask, which is actually the first line of defense for every student, it is for now very mandatory that every student must actually put on the face mask.
Okay. Now, there are indications, that some schools are requesting for COVID-19 tests, results before students can be admitted into the school. What is the situation in the FCT?
For public schools, it's been made clear we do not actually require students to carry out the COVID-19 test as a prerequisite requirement before they are admitted into the schools. For the private schools, I don't know if actually they do that, but the FCT administration is categorical about that. No COVID-19 test is required by any student before they are admitted into any school, whether be they private or actually public. Mm-hmm. But perhaps if they decide to do that on their own, which actually does not compel any student to go into the COVID test, for private schools, I cannot actually, speak for them for now.
But then, rumor has it, that some schools are using this COVID-19 test to extort money from students.
Well, if that is the practice, they must stop it. You must not extort the students in view of the COVID-19 pandemic. No school is being given the mandate to carry out compulsory COVID-19 tests before students are admitted into such schools.
Okay. Now, so far, have there been any news of any students being positive,
For public schools, no. For private schools, yes, perhaps some private schools, based on information available to Department of Policy, Public, PPR&S, that certain private schools, of course, have had cases of, reported cases of outbreak of COVID-19. But for us, due to the appropriate measures being put in place, we are yet and we are hopeful that, God willing, will continue to maintain the tempo in ensuring that none of our students contracts this deadly virus.
Okay, how safe, are the students, particularly those in boarding schools?
For our boarding schools in the FCT, particularly, specifically our public senior secondary schools, the government has put machineries in place, particularly in the area of renovation of the student hostels. Recently, contracts have been awarded for the procurement of double bunk beds as well as bedding materials in order to comply with the social distancing protocol, and a lot of other facilities have been provided in order not to allow the students to mingle together. As we speak, if you go to any of the FCT public schools, solar street lights have been provided to monitor these kids appropriately in the night, so that they will not hide under the cover of darkness to continue to mingle. So a lot of measures are put in place to ensure that These students, particularly the students in the boarding school in the FCT, have been given very serious attention. If you talk about the issue of facilities, not just the boarding facilities, even the laboratories have been given serious attention. The classroom structures equally have been given serious attention. And we've gotten to a level where the abandoned projects we have been issued. As we speak today, more than 90% of such projects have been completed and handed over.
Okay. Now, as the chairman of the FCT Secondary Education Board, do you also supervise, private boarding schools?
Yes, we have a department that is the Department of Quality Assurance that is being saddled with the responsibility of monitoring and supervising the private schools. They have their mandate in ensuring that all the private schools comply with the government regulations.
Okay, so how far so far with the private schools?
Well, so far so good. The DQA has been, not been resting on their oars in ensuring that they monitor these private schools. You see them on daily basis. They give them the do's and don'ts with regards to COVID-19. And based on the report we've received during our mandate, management meeting, it's been very, the private schools have been very cooperative, and most of these requirements are actually being complied with by virtually all the private schools. Okay. On Monday, we visited one of the private schools within the municipality. We went there and we saw even the committee, the COVID-19 committee in that school was in place. The wash hand stations also was in place, and social distancing in the classroom also was something that was very spectacular. So the private schools actually are giving the maximum cooperation in ensuring that they do not flout the order of the government.
Thank you very much. That is very heartwarming. It's been a pleasure having you here in our studio, sir. We've been speaking with the FCT Chairman, FCT Secondary Education Board, Yahya Musa Mohammed. Thank you so much for sparing your time.
Thank you. I must also give kudos to our Honorable Minister, who has given us all the necessary and maximum support in actualizing the positive gains we have recorded in FCT Secondary Education.
All right, thank you very much. Now, moving on, 3 important ways of slowing the spread of coronavirus is by wearing a face mask, staying 6 feet away from others, and washing of hands often. But the level of compliance to these laid down guidelines in the rural areas leaves much to be desired. Odiri Ogboru Arutere was at Waru, community of Abuja Municipal Area Council, and now reports.
With the second wave of coronavirus, it is expected that Nigerians adhere strictly to lay down COVID-19 protocols. But the case is different in Waru community. Waru community is located along Apo Mechanic Village Road. It is few kilometers away from the city center. This is the heart of the community where hustling and bustling take place daily. With the level of activities going on here in Waru, it is obvious that habitants have no idea of the danger they are exposed to with the dreaded coronavirus pandemic.
Anyone I ask, my people, the way I know people in my school, they'll be telling me that none of them or their family have ever had the coronavirus. We wear it when we are traveling, we are going to some town like that, yes.
I haven't seen that this is a person that is contacted with coronavirus. I haven't seen any victim. So that makes me not to bother to wear face mask.
By and large, it is expected that more sensitization is taken to the rural communities to further enlighten them on the preventive protocols to curb the spread of this common enemy, coronavirus.
Thank you, Odiri. And what's reflected in Chorin-Bisa community in the Abuja Municipal Area Council when NTA News visited was not a complete absence of government presence, as the Apo-Kershi bypass under construction will soon broaden the space of development in the area. Deborah Gezaji Maika, on special assignment, tells us her experience in the countryside.
Wasa district, though still under construction with many estates springing up, is already a home to many irrespective of class or status. The spate of development in this serene environment beautifully defines the landscape. It may interest you to know that lies the districts are various communities, among which is Chorimbisa, which connects Wasa district with Karshi districts of the Federal Capital Territory. The community, though still developing, is one among many villages in the FCT that is identified with older people, mainly the original inhabitants. The oldest in the community is Insa Abada, who is already over 100 years of age. He usually takes his evening relaxation under this tree. The original inhabitants of Chorimbisa are Gbagi-speaking people whose occupation is predominantly farming and hunting.
We are faced with many challenges, and we are glad that you are here to take our plight to the government.
But as peaceful and serene as it appears, farmers' herders' disputes still lingers in the community, with elders of the village appealing to the government to intervene and provide a lasting solution to the incessant destruction of their farmlands by some herders.
And talking sports now, Nigeria have been handed a boost ahead of AFCON qualifying matches as Victor Osimhen was given the medical all-clear. Tyrell Hatton emerges as champion in the World Golf Championship in Abu Dhabi. Details and more on Sports Brief with Rukaya Abbas Hassan.
Nigeria have been handed a boost ahead of their 2021 Africa Cup of Nations qualifying matches with Benin and Lesotho, with their leading scorer in the qualifiers, Victor Osimhen, given the medical all-clear to return to action. Osimhen has been away on injury after suffering a shoulder injury in the second half of Nigeria's 4-4 draw with Sierra Leone on November 13, 2020. Just as he was nearing a return to fitness, he tested positive to the coronavirus disease last month. He has, however, returned a negative test last week, paving the way for him to return to training. Bloemfontein Celtic were bundled out of the CAF Confederation Cup after losing 5-0 on aggregate to Nigeria outfit Rivers United. The second leg was scheduled to take place on Wednesday, 6 January, but was postponed after new COVID-19 restrictions did not allow Celtic to travel to Nigeria. Rivers United will now lock horns with fellow Nigerian Premier League outfit Enyimba in the next round. In international news, Tyrell Hatton produced a brilliant final round to win the Abu Dhabi World Golf Championship as Rory McIlroy missed out on the title once again. Hatton carded a closing 66 to finish 18 under par and secure a 6th European Tour title and 4th in the lucrative Rolex Series, a victory which will go a long way towards securing a second Ryder Cup appearance in September. And organisers of the Australian Open have added an extra women's warm-up event for players who have been unable to train. Competitors who arrived in Australia earlier this month are undergoing a strict quarantine process. However, there are 72 players, including British number 2, Heather Watson, and former Australian Open champion Victoria Azarenka, who have been in direct contact with people who have tested positive and are in a 14-day complete isolation. With Sports Brief, Rukaya Abbas Hassan, NTA News.
Many thanks, Rukaya, for that sports package, and that does it for Sunday Magazine this week. Thank you very much for watching, and do remember to wear a face mask, maintain social distance when out, and wash your hands under running water with soap. See you next week, God willing. Until then, good night.